Hi, everyone. It's Alan Thornton, President and CEO of St. John's Community Services, and back for another episode of Advocates for All. And this month is really important because during this month, and particularly this week, we're highlighting National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week and just the plight of so many people that are experiencing homelessness all across the country. And it is really my distinct pleasure because joining me is a friend who also happens to be just an amazing advocate in this field. And that's Nan Roman, who is the president and CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Nan, thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure to have you on today. So thank you for taking the time. I know your schedule is really, really busy.
Oh, Ellen, I'm more than happy to do it. And it's so nice to see you and connect. Ellen and I have known each other for a few years now across several different domains. And I've learned so much from you about the work and about the issue. So I'm very happy to do it.
So Nan, for those that might not be familiar with NAEH, can you give a little bit perspective of what is the purpose of the organization? Why do you all exist? And what is it that you do?
Sure. So the National Alliance to End Homelessness was formed in 1982, right when homelessness began as a widespread problem in the country. And really our goal is just to find what things work to end homelessness faster for people, and then to help jurisdictions implement those things. So we use research and data to figure out what the best solutions are. Then we work at the federal level with the administration and Congress to get solid policy and resources behind those solutions. And we work with communities to implement them.
And that's a huge undertaking. I mean, I think you probably, I'm guessing, are possibly the largest advocacy group and evidence-based like data researching group in this field, right? I mean, and you've been doing it for some time. I know I've gone to your conferences. Literally thousands of people come to these conferences because they are the standard for best practices and the best place to learn in terms of whether it's about policies that are coming out or whether it's about practice, and then just a networking piece. But how long personally have you been at NAEH and involved with this work?
I've been here since 1987. So a really long time. Haven't been the president all that time. We're not a very big organization, though, I must say. We have about usually between 20 and 25 people on staff. So, but yeah, I've been here for a long time.
And you've seen a lot, obviously. You've seen a lot of trends, both in numbers of people experiencing homelessness, as well as in approaches to ending homelessness and creating housing for people. What's the state of homelessness in America right now? Like, where do we stand? What kind of numbers are we looking at? And is it heading in the right direction?
So where we stand, we don't really have much data post-COVID from after COVID started, I must say, which is too bad and a drawback. But prior to that, we had about 555,000 people a night who were homeless. 37%, about 211,000 of those people are unsheltered, so don't have any place to be inside. Homelessness had been going down from 2007 to about 2016. But for the last couple of years, it's been going up, but very slightly, just a percent or two every year, but still not moving in the right direction.
And for those that might not be as familiar, what are some of the main causes of it increasing, or of people being unsheltered and out on the street, here in our cities?
Well, the main driver of homelessness really is housing affordability. I often say that when I first started working on housing issues, which was a long time ago in the 70s, we really did not have widespread homelessness in the country at all. We also had an adequate supply of affordable units for all of the low-income households that needed them. That gap really began, the shortage of affordable units really began in the late 70s. And by the early 80s, we saw homelessness emerge. So that gap is the main reason. And then people who are, for whatever reason, more likely to be poor or disadvantaged or have difficulty getting housing. So people with disabilities, people with behavioral health problems, people of color, often because of being lower income, are more likely then to be affected by that shortage of affordable housing. And people do have service needs. I don't mean to say that they don't, and that they wouldn't do better if they had services. But the one thing we do know is that if people have a home, they're not homeless, notwithstanding the other problems that they have.
Yeah, we certainly in Ithaca, where we're operating our emergency shelter and day programs, we've seen it increase over the last couple of years. And they're averaging right now about 100 to 115 people per night in a facility that really is only designed at maximum capacity to have 28, 30 people, and that's pre-COVID. So our team has been working really hard, coordinating efforts within the community and partnerships to be able to at least get people off the street and provide them a safe place to stay for the night. But without the next step, whether it's accessing services and supports, and certainly accessing the housing component, and in Ithaca, affordable housing just doesn't exist. I mean, so it is a huge, huge challenge that we're facing for the people that we're serving there.
Yeah, I mean, the country is over 7 million units short of having enough affordable housing to meet the need. So it's a game of musical chairs, and some people are going to get left off. And it really is something that we need to do something, but it just doesn't make very much sense. It's not without cost, because people utilize emergency assistance. Shelters themselves are not without cost, as you know, because you run one. And, it's certainly within our ability as a nation to solve this problem. It's not an insignificant problem, but it's not such a big problem that we shouldn't be able to solve it.
I mean, to that point, it seems like where we focused efforts, we have on certain populations, like we've been able to move the needle. So is that a correct statement? Like I'm thinking about the initiatives that have been tied to veterans that are homeless. It feels like, to your point, like where there's a will, there's a way. Are there positive signs in certain populations of people experiencing homelessness that we are able to affect change?
You're exactly right. I mean, it's not that we don't know how to end homelessness. It's basically that we just decided we're not going to end it. So we have cut veteran homelessness by more than half by using housing first strategies, getting people who have been homeless for long periods of time and have disabilities into permanent supportive housing that's subsidized in the long term and has services attached. Getting people who don't have any particular service needs, or just something happened and they need a hand up, attached to the SSVF program, which provides rapid rehousing, so shorter term subsidy and also connection to services if people do need them. That population cut in half. Family homelessness actually has been going down, contrary to the overall trend. It's been going down small amounts every year. I think we know it's very clear what to do about family homelessness, which is get people back into apartments they can afford. But we just don't have the resources to do enough of that, which is tragic, really. And yeah, so it's not a mystery how to do it, and we just need to decide to do it as a nation. We haven't made that decision yet.
Yeah, and I want to go there, but one point that you bring up, actually two things. You think the difference that even rental subsidies could do to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. Like if we could have more capacity like that injected into the system, then one thing would be to stop the problem from happening, before it starts.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of evidence that vouchers at rental assistance ends homelessness. I mean, and as you say, also, of course, prevents it at present. Only 1 out of every 4 people who are eligible by income for rental assistance receive it because there's not enough.
Right.
So this is something that we need to change as a nation. I will say that the President-elect Biden has made the commitment to try to make rental assistance available to everybody who needs it.
Yeah. So with that in mind, so we've got a major change with the election. So new administration brings new policies more than likely and new areas of focus. It seemed like the Obama administration was very much prioritizing veteran homelessness and family homelessness. So I'd be interested, do you have any sense of how President-elect Biden's team is going to try to approach kind of this at a national level, or is it still too early to really know?
I mean, I think it's a little early to know, but we can surmise, I guess, based on some evidence. It really usually takes until you get the secretaries in place or named before you really have an idea where it's going. And of course, I think looking at the very biggest picture, the we're also facing, a big deficit, and that's probably going to grow as eventually I imagine there'll be another stimulus bill. States and localities are really broke from what's happened already and the lack of income they're getting from taxes and so forth. So it's going to be a difficult time moving forward. I will say that also, I think the affordable housing crisis has been elevated on the national front now relative to say 8 years ago or 4 years ago. It's more well recognized as something that's causing problems for lots of people, not just homelessness, but housing affordability problems for middle income people. The Biden transition website makes commitments to trying to make housing an entitlement. It makes commitments to stand for housing first. I think they'll probably pull back the equal access, put the equal access rule back into effect. There was an executive order about training around race equity and so forth, restraining using federal funds for such training. I think that will probably be put back. So those are some of the things that I would expect will happen. What we hope happens is that not only is there more housing, but also on the services side, that one of the reasons that the veteran programs worked well, in particular the permanent supportive housing, was that there was a partnership really between HUD and VA, in which HUD provided the services, or HUD provided the housing and VA provided the services. And wouldn't it be great to see some really partnerships with teeth in them like that one around other populations where the services and the housing subsidy were connected so that people really could get their feet under them and get back to normal life?
It would be tremendous. And I certainly hope that we can get there. I think about housing first. And again, for people that might not be familiar with that, and it's been around for quite a while, there's a ton of evidence around the effectiveness of housing first. Essentially, where in situations, individuals that are currently out on the street, currently experiencing homelessness, like could literally go into an apartment with and then have supports offered to them, and so they can be able to kind of stabilize and start pulling their life back together. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen with Housing First and where maybe it's been done really well?
Oh gosh, there are lots of places where it's been done really well. I think, Finland has pretty much ended homelessness by using Housing First, so that's one place it's been done well. But I think it's been adopted, across the board in a lot of places. In Houston, they really cut homelessness by focusing on Housing First. The veterans story is all really about Housing First, and that's not to say that for some people it might work better to have a place that's got a little bit more rules and where they feel like they can get services and they're incentivized to participate, and that works better for them. But for most people, it seems that getting into a home and the stability of a home makes the services work better rather than services making the housing work better.
Yeah, it's kind of the hierarchy of needs. I mean, like,
Yes,
I mean, it's
exactly right.
people want to feel and need to feel that sense of safety,
Yeah.
and that their physical needs are first and foremost, being taken care of, and that they've got, they don't have cause to worry. And I know from my time working in homeless services, there is always this tension between kind of prioritizing certain behaviors and engagement over necessarily like, hey, if we could fast track someone into a place, why aren't we doing that? And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of system change That has happened. It's in the process of happening. I think there's been progress, but still probably a lot more across the whole country. Again, as communities coordinate at the local level and organizations figure out what role do they play.
Yeah. And I think, in addition to the fact that people need to feel the security, there's also just a lot of practical things. I mean, if you're a family and your kids are going to be in school, how are you supposed to feel good about putting your kids in school if you don't know where you're going to be living 2 months from now? You might be a totally different district. How are you going to find a job if you don't know where you're going to be living 2 months from now? How will you get to that job? You just can't solve even the practical problems of life very readily. I mean, all of us have probably moved once or twice. It really upends everything when just even a few days of instability around that.
Oh
So
yeah,
why we would expect people with more serious problems to be able to get it together without knowing where they're going to live
yeah. It just doesn't make a lot of practical sense.
doesn't make a lot of
It
sense.
doesn't make a lot of sense. So, um, and the last thing I would just kind of highlight is you mentioned earlier just the state of the economy in cities and states. We were fortunate when I was up in New York State, like we were able to access resources up there to help us build out affordable housing, in addition to also investing in our shelter. I'm concerned that, with the economy, if it doesn't bounce back, if people aren't able to get employed, you're going to start hearing about the eviction moratoriums going away and the risk that we're going to see homelessness increase even more. And then without the city and states armed with the resources they need to be able to really help people that end up out on the street and families that end up out on the street.
Yes, we're very worried about this too. We've been advocating fiercely for $100 billion in a stimulus bill of rental assistance so that when the eviction moratorium ends, people are still going to owe all this rent, so that they can pay that rent and not be evicted. Right, we're moving forward into, a continuing recession. Cities are broke, the federal government. It's worrisome. I would say, even though one thing to think about is that usually homelessness is a lagging indicator around recessions. This is a different one because of COVID, so it might not behave the same. But it's unlikely that we would see a huge influx, on January 1st into the shelter system. It'll probably take, usually people go stay with the family or a friend, or they try everything else to avoid having to enter shelter. So we probably wouldn't see a big increase for 6 to even 12 months in homelessness. Hopefully that will not happen. But I don't know. Even if a new administration were to reinstate the eviction moratorium, there would still have been 3 weeks in which a lot of people because the eviction moratorium is set to end now on December 31st.
Right.
There would be 3 weeks in which a lot of people would have been evicted.
Yeah, that's a lot of people at risk, tremendous numbers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just in wrapping up here, okay, so for over 30 years, you've been in this work, and it's not easy work. I imagine that you've had your heart broken more than once. And just as you hear stories and see the needs of people, and I know that you're not right now providing direct service, but you're seeing these things happen on a macro level. And then I also know that you've been active in your own community too, in terms of helping people that were homeless there as well. And now you have COVID on top of it, and then you have all the conflict that's been happening within the country. How have you been managing through this time, and what are you doing to kind of take care of yourself? And how have you managed to keep going all these years in a line of work that's not easy, and often you're always dealing with a lot of problems?
Well, of course, there are a lot of problems, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I've been working in it so long, and we still haven't solved the problem. So I'm not that happy about that. But I do think on the other side of it, I think a lot of really good things have happened for people, and I feel confident that because of the Alliance, a lot of people who probably wouldn't have been in housing are in housing. So I always feel gratified about that. I think we have a lot to be concerned about moving forward, as you pointed out. And a few other things I think that are concerns are the aging of the population, which we're not really on top of, and we need to take action on. And I worry that we have a large cohort of young people right now who just population size, demographics wise, who are going to have a hard time attaching to the job market and especially with the education system being a little bit on the edge right now. And if we don't help those young people attach to the job market, this is exactly basically what happened in the early 80s. In addition to the affordable housing issue, we had a large cohort of young people who didn't get jobs. And that is still the largest cohort of homeless people that we have today. So we don't want to tee up again another wave of homelessness. That's the bad news. But the good news is that, and for me personally, it's just such a privilege to work on this issue and to be allowed to try to help people. It's wonderful to get to meet people like you, Alan, and your colleagues, and that I admire so much and appreciate so much. And in terms of getting along in COVID, I can be irritated because I don't see my friends and I'm just sitting in the same place I'm always sitting for 8 months in a row, or whatever it is now. But I'm so privileged, obviously, also to have a home and a job. And I really have nothing and important and meaningful work to do. So there's really nothing for me to complain about.
Yeah, that's great perspective. Well, Nan, when I think of strong leaders, you are at the top of that list. You're one of my
gosh.
I just watching you from afar and getting to know you a little bit, just seeing your passion for making really transformational change at all levels. And it's just remarkable. So I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us in Homeless Services and those that we represent. And just thank you for being out there as a fighter and just keep encouraging you. We need your voice. So thank you so much for being such an advocate. And thank you for taking time to join me today.
Thank you, Alan. It's been a pleasure.